Gently does it. Gently does it. And... okay, if I can just get this one out. Easy does it. Gentle. Gentle. Ah! Oh, nuts. I don't believe it.
Don't worry, Tyler, we can have another game.
But it took me ages to put that up last time, when you sneezed and knocked it down.
Yes, all right, there's no need to bring that back up. We've talked about that enough already.
And it's going to take ages to build again.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we hear our next Bible story while we start to build it?
Okay. Better be a long one, though, because this is going to take days.
Well, actually, it says in the story that someone says they can knock down a whole temple and rebuild it in 3 days.
Well, maybe they can come and help me with this tower.
You never know. Let's see what happens in the Bible passage. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple courts, he found people selling cattle and sheep and doves, and others sitting at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. To those who sold doves, he said, "Get these out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a marketplace." His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." Then the Jews responding to him, "What sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all this?" Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days." They replied, "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you are going to raise it in 3 days?" But the temple he was speaking of was his body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples recalled what had been said. Then they believed the scripture and the words that Jesus had spoken to them.
Wow! So, he was super cross.
What, Jesus? Well, yes, he did get angry. Do you see why?
Yes, he wanted to buy a sheep, but he lost his pocket money, and so he turned over all the tables looking for his pocket money, and eventually he found it, and he realised that it had fallen under the temple. So he asked the Jewish people to knock down the temple so that he could find his pocket money. And they said, "But it took us ages to build this." And Jesus said, "Don't worry, I've got a friend called Alan who's a builder, and he could start on Monday, and if the weather stays fine, then he'll be able to get it done in a few days, a week next Tuesday at the latest." And then the Jewish people said,
Tyler,
"What about the snagging?
Tyler,
Will you be able to come back and do that?"
Stop.
Sorry.
Tyler, did you listen to the story?
Yes, a bit of it. I might have lost track. There was a sheep.
There was. In fact, there were lots of sheep and cows and doves, but they weren't selling them as pets. People used to come to the temple to show that they wanted to be right with God. They'd done things wrong and they wanted to show God that they knew that it was wrong and promised to live for him. So back then they used to use animals to make sacrifices.
Hold on. That's not very nice.
It's not, no, but It showed how important turning back to God was. It's a serious business. The great thing is that now Jesus has made one sacrifice that counts for all time. We'll talk about that more closer to Easter. But everyone was coming to the temple to buy animals, and there was a special type of money used in the temple. So they had to change their money into the temple money. And of course, all of this was sort of stopping people being able to worship God, because they had to do all of these things beforehand.
Yeah, and people were probably making lots of money out of it as well, of people trying to worship God.
Well, yeah, they were. And the bigger thing was that all of this was happening in the temple courts. You see, the Jewish people were allowed in the main parts of the temple, but the non-Jews were only allowed in the temple courts, the outside parts. And they wanted to worship God, and that's where they had to do it. But all of this was getting in the way. It was like a marketplace in the middle of church.
Yeah, that'd be a bit distracting, wouldn't it?
Exactly. And if there's one thing that gets Jesus angry, it's when people are stopped from coming to God. You see, Jesus isn't saying that we shouldn't have marketplaces. He's not even saying that making money is a bad thing. He's saying that being able to worship God, being able to turn to him if we want to, is one of the most important things. And nobody should stop anybody from being able to do that.
Okay, I get it, but where does playing Jenga come into it?
Well, it wasn't quite Jenga. The temple people asked Jesus to prove that he was important enough to be telling them what to do.
Or what not to do?
Well, that's right. And he said, "Destroy this temple and I will raise it up again in 3 days."
But it took 46 years to build, the story said.
Well, that's what they said in the Bible. Jesus was actually talking about the temple of his body, though. Do you see?
Uh-huh.
Well, the temple was meant to show how amazing God was. And that's exactly what Jesus does. He shows us how amazing God is, in the flesh. And remember, at Easter, on Good Friday, Jesus was killed. That's like the temple being knocked down. But 3 days later, he came back to life.
So that's what he means when he says, 3 days later, I will raise it up again.
Exactly.
So Jesus may not be great at helping me build my Jenga tower.
Well,
but he did save the world by dying and rising again, and told people that nothing should stop them worshipping God if they wanted to.
Yes.
Well, that's pretty good news.
It is pretty good news, Tyler. And we're going to hear more about it next week. But until then, goodbye and God bless.
Bye! Alright, there we are. Just a few more. Almost there. Tastes a bit woody. Last one. Phew. That took ages. I can't believe I've done it all though. We're ready for a game. Dan, we're... Never mind. Dan, we're ready for... Phew.